Alrighty. Ruben Obed here, bringing another episode of Solar Power for Dummies, and this time I'm here to explain why I personally prefer a 12-volt system for your house solar than a 24 volt or 36 volt or higher. Okay, and it's very simple. All right, it has to do with rain. Okay, when you have a 12 volt system, there's a like this. I'm gonna show you. All right, this is my 12 volt system. Okay, today in particular, all right, that's my 12 volt system. I have 6 deep cycle batteries in parallel, which many people will say that is a no. That batteries don't like being in parallel, and that blah blah blah. I took my chances, and my system has been running perfect. They're nice and balanced. And anyway, so I'm gonna show you what's going on. All right, look at the day today. All right, and it's sunny here now, but look at that sky. All right, you see, it's been raining all day. You see, if you hear the water falling, okay. So what happens? What happens when the day is like that? Well, what happens is that the sun is hidden by clouds, and you don't get a good charge. So when you don't get a good charge, your batteries don't get a good charge. They start to sulfate and they screw up. So I have to. What do I do on these type of days? Well, I do what anybody else would do. I would push my cats out of the way. They're hiding behind the door. I have to turn this on. All right, I turned my generator on. Okay, this is a little 2 cycle generator. Okay, as you can see, look, the water falling, everything's nice and everything's wet out here. It's a mess. I gotta clean it up. All right, but the whole point is that it's rainy and you don't get a good charge. I'm not saying that rain, because I mean there are days that are rainy, but there's still a lot of sun. But in general, it gets gray and you don't get that much power to recharge your batteries. So when you have a 12-volt system, all you have to do is to have a battery charger like this one, or like this one, Schumacher. This is a 8 amp one. That is a 40 amp charger. Okay, and I turn on my generator and I plug that in, and I charge my system. You know, my system gets a full charge. Quickly, easily. Because you can readily get a 12-volt charger anywhere. At an auto parts store, get a 12-volt charger. But you're not going to find it in any just auto parts store a 24-volt charger. So if my batteries were set up as 24 volts, then that would mean that a day like today, I'd have to disconnect this whole entire mess of cables, and I had to take it out, and I would have to basically, charge the batteries, independently, or if I have 3 in parallel and the other 3 in parallel, it's tedious. And what for? What for? So when I get a rainy day like this, I turn on my generator, I plug in the charger, I give it a little charge for 2 or 3 hours. I'm ready to rock and roll. If the sun comes out later on, perfect. Sun came out, topped it off really nicely, but I don't, rely on on whether or not the sun will it come out, will it not come out? Because at the end of the day, at night when I need my power, when I need to run my fans, I don't want to be shortchanged. So I turn the generator on for 2 3 hours, a little 2 cycle generator that doesn't even spend half a gallon. I mean, literally in those 3 hours, I mean, quarter gallon maybe. What's that, like $1.50 worth of gas? You know, and I top off my batteries. Ever since I got my batteries, I have always made sure that they get a full saturated charge. You know what I mean? So I know my batteries. They're about, I don't know, maybe about 2 years old, and but they always get a really really good. Why is it that every time I am talking here, some bullshit goes by making noise? Listen to this. Listen to this. It's like constant interruptions. Look, a little wagon selling candy. Look. You see the crap I gotta be dealing with? Pardon my French, guys, but it really pisses me off because it's like every time I'm doing a live video, some bullshit it comes to interrupt. But anyway, going back to this, that's why I do 12 volts. Some people say, oh well, 24-volt system is cheaper, and it is, because what happens is, with the 12-volt system, let's say you have a 30-watt 30 amp charge controller, the max you can put in terms of solar panels at 12 volts for a 30 amp charge controller would probably be about 580 watts, which is the limit on that charge controller right there. That's my 30-watt EP ever. All right. But if I would have had this system set up at 24 volts, I could have added 1,000 watts worth of solar panels with the same charge controller, just switching the batteries to a 24 volt. Okay. But what happens if I switch to 24 volts? Then I get a rainy day and I can't just charge my battery easily. So what I do is I have a 30 amp charge controller, and I bought another. This one is, I believe, a 10 amp charge controller, and I have both of those connected in parallel to my system. Okay, so right now, my first solar array is running on this 30-watt system, which is 500. I have about 570 watts of solar panels running on this one. Over here, I have two 100-watt solar panels, and you add the amperage on both, and they really they communicate with each other. You know what I mean? So I can have those two things. They're connected to this one battery bank at 12 volts, and during the day, that's receiving charge, and I have this charger putting amperage into the battery. Okay, you're not gonna mess it up if you have different power sources. It's like people with RVs, they have their solar, but they connect themselves to shore power. So right now I got two charge controllers charging one bank. All right, and they regulate, because each charge controller sees the voltage and sees how much the battery needs, so they talk to each other. There really isn't a problem with doing that. In fact, I'm planning on adding a third charge controller to the system so I can add some more solar panels. But I always keep it at 12 volts. 12 volts is relatively safe. You know what I mean? When you could touch, the batteries with your bare hands at 12 volts, you're not gonna get a shock. You're not gonna get electrocuted. You know what I mean? And the problem with doing 24-volt things is when you go 24 volts and higher, that's when you start feeling, a shock. As well as what happens is if you have your solar panels set up for 24 volts and you have them in series, what will happen is that when it if you get like shading or something, then your output like drops drastically. It's not like parallel. When you have your solar panels in parallel, then if there's a shading one side, the other panels keep functioning perfectly. In series, that's not the case. In series, yes, you have a higher voltage, and your charge controllers, especially the MPPT ones, they actually like prefer a higher voltage. But the reality is that at least for myself, I think it's safer, easier, more practical to run a 12-volt system. Now, mind you, if I were connecting some really big solar panels, that are very high voltage, and if they were far away where I have to do a really long wire run, then that would justify going 24 volts, because at 24 volts you have lesser losses. But my solar panels are practically not even 10 feet away. They're on the roof, and the batteries are right there. So I mean, that's maybe 15 feet. That's a very, very short run, you know. And so that's pretty much it. I know a lot of people, they prefer the 24 volts, and I mean, I'm not down. It has its purposes, but at least me, for my purposes, and in the practical aspect of it, I am not going to go 24 volts because of the whole cloud issue. I want to be able to charge my batteries. If it gets cloudy, I just want to plug in the charger and charge it up. I don't want to be removing batteries and taking off cables and doing a whole mess of stuff. You know, Maybe there are 24-volt chargers out there. I don't know of it. I've never seen them. You know what I mean? I've never seen them, and I like working where it's practical. You know, like right now, if my, let's say my inverter goes bad, 12-volt inverter, any auto parts shop will sell you a 12-volt inverter. You're not gonna find 12-volt inverter, I mean 24-volt inverters locally as easy. Online, yeah, Amazon, you can find 24-volt inverter anywhere. But in terms of practicality, I believe that 12 volt is the simplest. Um, the only issue with 10 volts, I mean with 12 volts, is the cost. Yes, you will pay a little more, especially cabling. Cabling gets expensive. You know what I mean? But if you have a relatively small system, I would stay with 12 volts. Stay with 12 volts. It's safe. You know what I mean? It's easy, and it works. At the end of the day, it works. At the end of the day, we have these systems, so that we can have some power during an outage. Me, I personally, I live totally off grid with my 12-volt system, and it works perfect, flawless. I have no issues, no issues at all. So, you know, but that's why I prefer 12 volts. I am in no way criticizing 24 volts. It does have its benefits, but I like to talk about the benefits of 12 volts, which are, okay, simplicity, safety, and charging ability with any kind of automotive charger. Charge it up real quick, 12 volts. You know what I mean? And let me see. Well, that's pretty much it, guys. So this is episode, I believe, 9. And I'm going to continue doing episodes. Check out all the other episodes that I've talked about, teaching about solar and trying to keep it as simple as possible. Take care, guys. Peace. And if you like our channel and you want to make a contribution, the PayPal link will be in the description. Any amount will help us continue doing our programming and continue to develop our off-grid living, and be able to upgrade the things that we do here. So take care, guys. Peace. Hope you learned something today.